We understand there may still be hostages within the school at Columbine High School. No one has been arrested at this point. We're thinking of
another gunman at Virginia Tech that he'd opened fire. There were immediate fears. The massacre of 4 years.
There was something that ensued after authorities began arriving at this.
What unfolded here in the early morning hours here in Orlando, a massacre.
Basically what you guys are, from the hospitals we're hearing that there are at least 20 casualties.
For the students of this generation, the Columbine High School mass shooting of 1999 was largely regarded as an isolated incident. However, 187,000 students have been affected bystanders or victims of gun violence in schools since the Columbine massacre, including the Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, and most recently, Stoneman Douglas shootings. It has since become evident that none of these cases were isolated incidents, and the issue has evolved into an epidemic that would shape this and those of future generations' views on gun violence. We talk about gun violence in America after mass shootings, but the conversation is much larger and more complex than debates allow. Some critics would argue that the prevalence of violence in our society, in all of its forms, have influenced our reactions to it in our everyday lives. Countless studies have proclaimed that with the advent of video games, along with the incorporation of these themes into music, movies, and other pop culture influences, children and teens have become rapidly desensitized to gun violence, thus triggering a degree of apathy towards these issues. As the wave of gun violence has evolved into an epidemic, legislation has failed to effectively address the elephant in the room until recently. On February 21, 2018, following the tragic Valentine's Day shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, students from across the state of Florida marched alongside survivors in hopes of changing legislators' views towards gun control. While everything is fresh in the headlines, legislators and politicians alike have made countless commitments to change. Yet, in spite of these obligations, legislation has not put forth the adequate footwork regarding their positions on gun control and school safety. Mere hours before thousands of students were supposed to confront legislators regarding their position on gun control, 71 Florida House representatives denied the motion to consider the discussion about banning assault rifles. So what, exactly, are protesters and student activists hoping to achieve? Their goal? To convince legislators to pass a slate of gun control bills. The outcome? A sweeping student-led grassroots movement which has forced legislators to take notice. Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School will not go down in history as a school shooting in a long list of many, but rather as the school in which a revolution was begun.
We, the students, educators, student councils, and student governments officially declare that we will not be silenced anymore.
There have been the moments of silence in Congress after Sandy Hook, after Pulse, again after Parkland, and I am fed up with moments of silence.
Stand up for those who don't have a voice now. Stand up for those parents in Parkland who had to bury their kids.
The same students who saw their school painted crimson can immediately begin a movement. Detached politicians should be able to do the bare minimum of their job and accomplish something.
Regardless of party and regardless of campaign donations, to address proper and reasonable solutions to these issues.
Less than a month after the mass shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School, a bill was passed in Florida which included a number of reformed gun laws, including a mandatory 3-day waiting period to buy a gun, raising the age to buy a firearm to 21 years old, as well as measures to arm school personnel, such as JROTC teachers and active/retired military and law enforcement. Special training sanctioned by the state is required. A provision was implemented that allows school districts that don't wish to participate to opt out of the program. The school safety bill was signed into state law by Governor Rick Scott on March 9th, as he was surrounded by parents of the Parkland shooting victims. This is a page in history that is still being written. Regardless of your political affiliation, America's youth are paying close attention to gun law reform issues and school safety, and no doubt wondering what, if anything, will happen next. From walkouts to national marches televised from across the United States, Generation Z continues to ask the same question: when will enough finally be enough?